I'm always tempted to start talking after the big voice in the sky says, here's Matt Schneidman on the game. And then I forget there's one more Jordan Love clip in there.
Yeah.
It's a good intro you put together, Doug.
Thank you. Who knows? At some point, maybe I'll shuffle the deck at some point this season and hit you with another one.
Maybe. It was funny because we were joking in the media auditorium today because Matt LaFleur was teasing Bill Huber because Bill prefaced a question by saying, well, I'm just an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. And LaFleur said, you're not an idiot, Bill. And Bill Huber has said that before when Matt LaFleur has said something to Bill Michaels has used it for the intro to his show.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I was kind of like, well, he's not talking about Bill Michaels. Then I was like, wait a second. I can't talk because we use a Jordan Love clip talking about Matt LaFleur.
Sure.
And not me.
I used to have Michael Jordan talking about Doug Collins all the time in one of my intros.
We got a lot to get to today. Rough transition there, but we got to get right into it. 2-hour practice today. A lot to talk about. Same for tomorrow. And then the team will have a walkthrough and fly to Denver on Thursday. I will not be part of the show on Thursday because my flight from Green Bay leaves at like 4 something, and then my connection in Minneapolis leaves at 6:45. So I'd be on the first 10 minutes of the show before I have to board the plane. Anyway, today, the talk of the day, talk of the week, has been Jordan Love's deep ball. I think a couple other people, Ryan Wood, Rob Domofsky, wrote stories on it, and we saw a couple more of them today. According to ESPN Stats and Info, Jordan Love hit on 34.7% of his passes of at least 25 air yards last year. That ranked 15th in the NFL, so middle of the pack. Adam Stenavich, the offensive coordinator, said Monday that he wants that number to be around 50%. Stenavich said that's where the elite quarterbacks are. Jordan Love obviously hit on the one to Dontavian Wicks. He had a beautiful deep ball down the left sideline to Jaden Reed that would have been for about 30 yards in practice today that he fit in between Javon Bullard, who was trailing Reed, and Xavier McKinney, who was coming over from his deep safety spot. I think Bullard was playing nickel on the play. He had a bomb to Christian Watson down the middle of the field that Watson went up for and got over Eric Stokes. I missed the beginning of the play since I was tweeting something, an injury update from practice. But from those around me, it seemed to be a Jordan Love underthrow. Watson had Stokes beat. I was wondering, why is this a jump ball 50 yards downfield? But Watson went up and got it, much like he did on the first play of the Lions game on Thanksgiving when Love underthrew him and Watson went up and got it. There were deep balls today that did not connect. There was one to Romeo Doubs deep down the left sideline that was thrown short of him. And Eric Stokes made up for the Watson grab by twisting his body and breaking it up. So as you would expect, because 50% is not 100%, the deep ball is still a work in progress. But we've seen some good signs, especially from the Jordan Love, Christian Watson combo so far this camp. That is the primary deep ball combo that the Packers need to ride for those explosive plays this year.
Yeah, and listen, it's going to be where the Packers receivers, I think, are going to really shine too. I mean, you put a lot of it on the quarterback, obviously, but when Christian Watson goes up and is able to high point a ball, that's one of the advantages that he has that a lot of other receivers don't have, especially on this team. So he's got the size, he's got the speed, he's just got to hang on to the ball, but he can really help himself and his quarterback out by doing that. And, again, it's just a matter of Christian Watson, as we've said a million times, like you're a broken record, like I'm a broken record, that he's got to stay on the field. But, it's all a work in progress, and nobody's perfect, especially in his second year as a starting quarterback for Jordan Love. But I think it's going to be something that he is able to improve upon. But, there's two ends of every throw, and, you got to have good receivers to go get him. And Christian Watson, I think, has always been a good receiver. It's just a matter of, hanging on to the football, number one, and number two, staying on the field.
Absolutely. Staying on the field is paramount on that list, and he has so far. He hasn't missed any practice time because the one play he got hurt on was the last play of practice. Another takeaway from practice today, and I offer this one with severe caution, not because it has to do with an injury or anything. Well, it might, but because for the first time in camp, we saw someone not named Sean Clifford man the red zone drill and the end of practice drill with the number 2 unit. His name's Michael Pratt. Now, I want to offer this caveat. I don't know if Sean Clifford was banged up. I don't know if it was because of performance. Sean Clifford threw one interception that I saw, and then when they do two spot, which is when the starters are on one field and the backups are on the other, and I always watch the starters, Rob Reichel, who was watching the other side, said Sean Clifford threw another interception to Kalen King. The one on the main field was to Zane Anderson. So I don't know if it was because of that. I don't know if they just wanted to get a look with Pratt at the twos, and there was nothing more to it. We'll ask Matt LaFleur tomorrow morning. That's one of the downsides to having these Matt LaFleur pressers before practice is we have to wait quite a while in press conference time to ask him about stuff. And by the time we do, it's not as timely because we've already written our stories for the day. But I'll be interested to hear what Matt LaFleur says about why Michael Pratt worked with the twos. And there was the twos offensive linemen, the twos DBs, like the twos were on the field. It wasn't just, oh, let's have the threes do it. And normally at the end of practice, they do sometimes a red zone drill, sometimes 2 minutes, sometimes an end of half. Like today, it was they had the ball at the their own 45, no timeouts, scoreless game. I think 40 seconds left, and they needed to get into field goal range.
I feel like the question was asked somewhere whether or not Michael Pratt might move up from the number 3 quarterback slot to the number 2 quarterback slot. I don't know where I heard that. It was on yesterday's show.
Yeah. And my answer was an emphatic no.
Right.
And I still think Sean Clifford is the backup because if I know Matt LaFleur, and who knows if it's the right answer or a truthful answer, if you will, he's probably going to say tomorrow, oh, I wouldn't read anything to it. We just wanted to get Pratt a look. And what makes me think there might be more than just performance to it, well, I should say what makes me think it might not be performance related is because Sean Clifford has had a solid 2 weeks and had a solid preseason game. That's not just me saying that. That's coaches saying that. One bad practice wouldn't demote him to number 3. And also, the change was made mid-practice. If they really wanted to change it up, they would do it at the start of practice.
Fair. And I'm not saying, listen, at the end of yesterday's show, I was just asking the question, just playing devil's advocate, if nothing else. But I also think that it bears, at least, some examination, because at the end of the day, Michael Pratt has a stronger arm. I don't know if it's a more accurate arm, but he definitely has a stronger arm than Sean Clifford. And Sean Clifford, it's not like he's got all this starting experience that Michael Pratt doesn't have. They both had a lot of success as starting quarterbacks in college. Michael Pratt played some big-time games at Tulane. Sean Clifford played big-time games, some big-time games at Penn State. I don't want to denigrate their college experience for either one of them, but that was where they both really shined. But, I mean, Michael Pratt outdueled Caleb Williams in a January 6th or in a, one of the January 1st bowl games in the Cotton Bowl a couple of years ago. So I think it at least bears examination whether or not Sean Clifford is, just because he's been there a year longer than Michael Pratt, automatically he's the number 2 guy.
In fairness to Caleb Williams, the stat lines from that game
were ridiculous. They were ridiculous.
Michael Pratt didn't outduel anybody. He threw.
Well, he outdueled a terrible defense.
Well, no, he went 8 for 17 for 234 and 2 touchdowns. Caleb Williams went 37 for 52 for 462 and 5 touchdowns.
He threw the ball a little bit more.
Tajay Spears, who I believe plays for the Titans now, 17 carries for 205 and 4 touchdowns. Tajay Spears outdueled people.
All right,
Michael Pratt did not.
He won the game.
Tulane won the game. I saw people tweeting out that box score when the Packers drafted Michael Pratt, being like, we got the better rookie QB. And it's like, he didn't really do anything.
You didn't really. One was the first overall pick. Another was the 7th round drafters. And there was a reason for that. But yeah, I mean, he still played in a big time type of situation. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is, I think. Excuse me.
Hi, Tim.
Anyway,
for
those watching the stream, you see what's going on. Yeah, so I don't think it's too much. I wouldn't read too much into it.
But in terms of Michael Pratt, I think that at least what we saw from him in his first game as a Green Bay Packer is the same thing that I think we've seen throughout camp. He's got a big time arm. Whether or not that translates into being a good NFL quarter, there's a lot of guys that have strong arms that aren't great quarterbacks.
What just happened?
I don't know. Tim Lays
Do you know
was in
who
there.
that is?
Yeah,
Do you know who that is?
Yeah, that's Tim Lays. That's the engineer.
Okay. Yeah, I've never seen him. I figured he knew what he was doing. For those not watching on the stream, a man who I've never seen before, who clearly works here at the WNFL studios, who have been so kind to us, came in and started playing with buttons on the soundboard in front of me and knocked over my computer, and then started playing different noise in my ear than what was than our show. So I am thrown in shambles right now.
Yes. Yeah, that's no, Tim knows what he's doing. He's one of the best engineers there is. So I'm not exactly sure what he was doing. But yeah, it's nice to see him. Hi, Tim.
Yeah, he's gone now. I don't know if he knew we were live on the air and doing a show. But anyway, appreciate him taking care of the studio, doing the engineer stuff. But yes, Michael Pratt has shown some good things. My main reservation for saying, oh, this is a backup quarterback change, and the reason I put in my tweet teasing my story, QB2 change question mark, is because I'm trying to get you to click on the story. It's not clickbait because it's still a question as to why the change was made, but we'll get an answer tomorrow morning.
Yeah. I suspect that Sean Clifford's probably still the number 2 guy. I wonder how open the competition is.
Of course.
That's all.
Now, the Packers got a mixed bag of injury news today with regards to a couple rookies. Now, Edgerrin Cooper is still sidelined. Tyron Hopper was back at practice in a limited capacity after missing Saturday's game. But the 2 guys I want to talk about are Jordan Morgan and Marshawn Lloyd. Jordan Morgan, obviously the Packers right guard, has not taken a single snap at tackle, even though he said he wanted to be a NFL left tackle, or at least prove he could do that after there were some questions about his arm length when he was a college left tackle at Arizona. He's back. He missed about a week, which is what Matt LaFleur said when he injured his shoulder about a week ago. And that's good news. He didn't participate in team drills today. We don't know if he's going to do anything in joint practice or Saturday's or Sunday night's game, but I think there's enough ramp-up time for him to be able to get a hold back on that starting right guard spot. Barring injury, my guess is he starts at right guard in week 1. Because also, I was talking about this with Jason Wilde today. The Packers are mainly working Jordan Morgan at right guard. Adam Stenavich got to a podium and said yesterday that if you're not going to start, you need to be able to play multiple positions on the offensive line. You know who's been playing multiple positions recently? Sean Ryan, not Jordan Morgan. So to me, that says all things considered equal, no injuries, the Packers want Jordan Morgan to start at right guard and Sean Ryan to be the backup for all 3 interior spots. Because for the first time since high school, Sean Ryan said, played center in the game on Saturday. Now, the not-so-good injury news. Your boy, Marshawn Lloyd.
Yeah.
He missed time earlier in camp with a hip injury.
Mm-hmm.
Suffered a hamstring injury in the game on Saturday. He didn't practice today. And again, it's one of those, I wish we could talk to LaFleur after practice, although I'm not really sure it would have made a difference here. LaFleur was asked about Lloyd. He said he will not be practicing. And then the follow-up question was, he won't be practicing today or this week? And he said he will not be practicing.
Oof.
So I've covered Matt LaFleur for long enough that I know not to read too much into that. But it doesn't sound all that great. There are better ways to answer that question if you're looking for it's just going to be a one-day thing. My guess is it won't be just a one-day thing. That's my guess. But I want to reserve judgment until we actually know.
Most hamstring injuries aren't just one-day things.
Right.
I wish
that's
they were.
True. And it's an unfortunate turn for a guy who's obviously flashed some really nice things in camp. Obviously flashed potential to be the number 2 running back, although I still think AJ Dillon is that right now. We'll get into him after the break, but it's not good news for Marshawn Lloyd if he's out an extended period of time, because these reps are so valuable for a guy like him. And we'll see how long he's out, but Emmanuel Wilson, here's your opportunity. And we talked yesterday, they can put Marshawn Lloyd on IR before roster cutdown day and then designate him to return. Unlike past years, you can do that with 2 guys this year. Will we see that with him? We'll see. But more opportunities for Dillon in practice, more opportunities for Emmanuel Wilson in the game to state his case for a 53-man spot. Should be an interesting battle for the running back spot, as we've talked about. For now, we're going to talk about AJ Dillon after the break. You're going to want to hear what he had to say to one reporter today in the locker room. Stick with us right here. It's the Matt Schneidman Show on The Game. We've still got a lot of nice weather and outdoor golf to be played, so Iron Jock wants you looking, feeling, and smelling good doing it. Now through August 18th, take 35% off of Iron Jock's entire golf line, which are their polos, vests, and quarter zips. 35% off with promo code 35golf. Go to ironjock.com for details. That's ironjoc.com. Now, Doug, I want to get right into this. We talked a little bit on yesterday's show about AJ Dillon, specifically that 3-play sequence in Saturday's game where the Packers had a 2nd and 1, then a 3rd and 2, then a 4th and 1, and they ran Dillon each time and didn't get it. Now, on the surface, it looks like, oh, AJ Dillon, he's built like that. He can't get those yards. And again, let me preface this with this is not a defense in general of AJ Dillon as a football player. He has not been good enough of late and doesn't rank well. I think I don't know if it's 28th or something, but he doesn't rank well in terms of yards after contact per rush relative to his size. You would think he should be ranked higher than that. Anyway, he's like the popular guy fans love to pile on. Again, has he been good enough? No. But I think a dose of reality and perspective is needed on all this stuff. Watch those plays. They're blocked up terribly. Ben Sermon said even an elite running back wouldn't have been able to do anything with that. Best case scenario, AJ might not have even gotten a first down on any of those runs, even if he did lower his pad level a little more, which Ben Sermon said he would have liked to see Dillon do. He said that wouldn't have guaranteed anything. Matt LaFleur said they need to block it up better. Now today, AJ, in my experience covering him the last 4+ seasons, is one of the more diplomatic guys in that locker room. Really nice guy, always available to talk, never really causes any controversy. And I'm not saying this is controversial, but take a listen to this clip from Cody Krupp from WLUK, Channel 11, the Fox affiliate here in town, when Cody asked AJ Dillon about that sequence and maybe some criticisms around Dillon's play as it relates to that sequence. I want to go to you first on that, Doug. What do you think?
Pretty passionate defense of himself. I think that when athletes say, I don't pay attention to the outside noise, I mean, they're human beings. We all hear it. And clearly he's heard from the outside.
Yeah.
So listen, I mean, we said it on yesterday's show before Cody asked that question. Credit to him for asking the question and getting that kind of response. But it was blocked terribly. And, some of the other criticisms of AJ Dillon, I think, have been warranted because we've seen it on the field. And you look at those plays, that was the second sequence of the game, the second possession for the Packers of the game. And maybe everybody was still coming off of this high of, the first team going out there and Jordan Love finding Dontavian Wicks from 65 yards out, and everybody was just high over that. But it was blocked terribly. The offensive line has had its issues throughout camp. And yeah, I think that AJ Dillon had a very human moment when he was talking to Cody Krupp there. And I don't blame him for it. And when he says that, if you don't live in my house, my opinion is secondary. So secondary. Well, I think that's probably the proper way to think of it too, because he can't let the outside noise get in because quite frankly, I think he's going to make the team, and Marshawn Lloyd's injury probably has at least a little bit to do with that. But we've talked about whether or not it's foregone conclusion that AJ makes the team this year. And up until maybe Saturday's injury to Lloyd, it, at least to me, wasn't a foregone conclusion, but it was probable that he was going to make the team. And I do think that he's going to make the team. But yeah, I mean, I think that he's feeling a little bit of the pressure, but you can't let that outside pressure kind of dictate the way that you go about your business. And I think that was a very human response, and I credit him for it.
Sure. Like we talked about yesterday with Keyshawn Nixon's tweet. I'm fine with guys sticking up for themselves.
Sure, absolutely.
They don't have to be robots.
And it's not like AJ was throwing anybody else under the bus either. It's not like
his offensive line a little bit,
but he didn't name anybody by name. He didn't say the
Right.
offensive line needed to block better for me. He was. I think he was more putting up for himself as opposed to putting blame on someone else
Right.
or another group of people. I mean, that's a delicate balance. I will admit that. But he was putting up for himself, and I get it, man. I'm on board with that.
Yeah, I mean, would you like AJ Dillon to play better? Of course. He knows that. He knows he needs to play better. He knows he needs to get those yards in tandem with his offensive line. He's not like he's trying to do this. And again, this is not a defense of him, but I do think there needs to be a dose of reality and context and perspective with all this stuff. And that's kind of what we try to do here, both in writing and in audio form. That being said, he just needs to be better. And whether that means he doesn't make the team and goes and plays somewhere else, or he's the number 2 this year, or he plays more of a complimentary third down back role because he's better in pass protection than Emmanuel Wilson or Marshawn Lloyd, he just needs to find his role and accept it. And I think he kind of has. And I think he's very comfortable with where he is. I did a story on him a couple weeks ago and talked to him, and he knows where he's at right now. He doesn't think he's the number 1 back here. He doesn't think, he's some superstar. He knows that he needs to find a role and play it, and that he signed a contract for barely more than the vet minimum for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fact of the matter of the situation. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, that's crappy to throw your teammates under the bus. Because as a reporter, like I said yesterday and just said now, you want guys to speak their mind. You spend your days trying to get these guys to give insight and good quotes. And when a guy says that, I appreciate it. So shout out to Cody for getting that.
Without a doubt. Yeah, listen, as far as AJ Dillon putting up for himself, and I don't think that he was throwing anybody under the bus, including his offensive line, but he was just kind of stating the fact. I graded out 98%. I'm not sure.
That was funny.
Well, yeah.
Not funny because it's not true. Funny because of how he said it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was clearly, I think he was annoyed with the question. I don't know that he was annoyed with Cody for asking it because Cody had to ask the question.
I don't think he was annoyed with the question. I think he's
annoyed with having to answer it.
And when someone says, I don't go on Twitter, I don't see anything that people say.
Okay.
You have a sense for what people are saying. When you say, I didn't go on Twitter, but if I did, that's like OJ saying, if I did it.
Right. Sure. Yeah. If I did it, here's exactly how I would have mapped that out.
If I had gone on Twitter, this is what I would have seen.
Sure.
I probably would have seen this. Well, yeah.
How many guys have burner accounts?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to give a direct answer because I just don't know. But if a guy says, I probably know what they're talking about, then he's seen some of the stuff at some point before what they've said. And that's just human nature. That's totally fine.
Sometimes their significant others are
of course,
the ones that monitor that as well.
If it's not them directly seeing it, it's someone around them feeding them that information.
Yeah. I don't listen. If you're a public figure, I don't blame you for having a burner just to see what people are saying about you. If somebody's talking smack about you, you want to at least know it. I get it. I mean, that's the best part about social media is that everybody has a voice. The worst part about social media is that everybody has a voice.
Has a voice. Yep.
So you can at least, as a person, monitor what people are saying about you. How you let it affect your business, I guess that's up to you. But AJ Dillon clearly has heard the criticisms.
Right.
Clearly. He reacted how he reacted. And I think I'm stating this poorly. I don't think he was annoyed with Cody. I don't think he was annoyed. I think he was annoyed with the fact that people are as critical of him as they have been. And now it's crept into the locker room because a reporter is doing his job and asking the question. Maybe I'm stating that a little bit better, but you're right. AJ Dillon's one of the most stand-up guys in that locker room. Win, lose, or draw. Play well, play poorly, no matter what. He's always there. And that's admirable. And I think that's going to serve him well once his playing days are over, whenever those playing days may be.
Sure. I think part of it too is just not that it crept into the locker room and he's being asked about it, but I think he used that as a platform because because he sees the camera in his face. He knows it's going to be put out there and put on Twitter. He sees it as an opportunity to provide clarity and context, obviously in a pointed way, but for fans. And I read the replies to the tweet. It doesn't seem like they're like, oh, okay, AJ, you made a good point there. It's just exponentially growing, kind of the criticism of him. And that's how some fans are. If fans are like that and they're unwilling to look at the context of things, whether it's with AJ Dillon or Jordan Love, whoever, then there's nothing you can do about it. You just got to let them go.
And there's a certain pile-on effect on social media as well. I mean, one person says it, then 2 people, 3 people, 400, 10,000. I mean, it's just one of those snowball effects that unfortunately happens sometimes in sports. And, I know he's 5 years removed from being drafted, but as a second-round draft choice, I mean, the Packers, nobody drafts perfectly, right?
No.
In the NFL, and the third-round draft choices have been very well documented that the success rate is very low in Brian Gutekunst's tenure as Packers general manager in that specific draft, or in that specific round. But yeah, as a second round draft choice, I think Packers fans probably expected a little bit more out of AJ Dillon than what they've gotten.
And as I wrote, and as I've said, I think it was a little unfair, given his skill set, given what he's been asked to do in Green Bay, that he was a second round pick, because being a second round pick, there come massive expectations with that.
Sure. Yeah.
But he was never supposed to be the feature back. Granted, at times when Aaron Jones was hurt, but also I don't think it helped that Matt LaFleur and the team kind of pumped him up as this 1B to Aaron Jones 1A, or even 1A to Aaron Jones 1A.
But don't you think when he was drafted in the second round, that was the idea from day one?
Yeah, but I think the Packers cared so much about having 2 reliable backs in the backfield that they thought, okay, just like we saw with Jordan Love, if a guy is high enough on your board, regardless of where he is going to fit on the depth chart, you're going to take him. That's why they took Jordan Love.
Yeah.
That's why they took AJ Dillon, I'm assuming. Did they think AJ Dillon was going to overtake Aaron Jones as the number 1 running back? I don't think so. They knew they were probably going to lose Jamal Williams in free agency the next year. They did. So they were fine with AJ Dillon being the number 3 for a year. But I think the expectations that came along with the draft slot and kind of how the coaches build them, maybe I'm being too kind in saying it was unfair to him because he hasn't lived up to whatever expectations have been placed on him. But I think he's a serviceable number 2, and he can be that. He wasn't it last year, but he can be it.
I don't know if I agree with you.
Okay. What's your point then?
I think that AJ Dillon, I fear we've seen the best of AJ Dillon as a football player. I think that whatever he does post-football playing, he's going to be a success at. I think that he could, if he wanted to go into coaching, he could do that. If he wanted to stay in the game and be a broadcaster, he could do that. If he wants to get out of football entirely, I think he's going to be a success at that. But as we've seen, most of the time after year 5 in the NFL with running backs, you've probably gotten, for a majority of them, already the best out of them. And I fear that maybe we've seen the best of AJ Dillon so far. He came into shape in phenomenal condition. Matt LaFleur's raved about it. He walks around the locker room without his shirt on, just showing everybody that, you know what, I'm yoked. And he is. If he wanted to be a bodybuilder after he's done playing football, I think he could probably do that. But he was billed as, Quadzilla. He's the guy who's going to, fight for that extra yard. He's going to be the guy that when the weather turns in November and December, he's going to be able to be a mudder, in the sloppy turf of Lambeau Field. We just haven't seen it. We've seen it in, little blips and blurps, but we haven't seen it consistently.
And blips and blurps?
Blips and blurps. We've seen it occasionally, but
not consistently enough. I agree with that part.
Not consistently enough. And listen, again, I can't say this enough. I think the world of AJ Dillon. I really do. As a person, as a football player, in my opinion, I fear that we've seen the best of him already.
And that's fair too.
Prove me wrong. That's what I would tell him.
That's fine.
Tell me I'm wrong. Prove me wrong.
I'll tell him you told him.
Absolutely. Please do.
Transitioning from AJ Dillon to a guy who fans should be thrilled about, at least if what has happened early in camp is any indication of what's to come. Evan Williams looks like a guy back there, man. He has 4 interceptions. He has the forced fumble in the game. And today there was one play where they had an outside run to Josh Jacobs, and Evan Williams is trying to cut off the edge. He's all the way down there trying to cut off the edge, and he fights through a block. I didn't see who was blocking him, or I don't remember who was blocking him. Fights off the block and basically tackles Josh Jacobs without tackling him for no gain, a loss of a yard, gain of a yard, whatever. And he is pumped up. He's going nuts. Big scream. I think his towel flew out because he went, so crazy after that. This kid looks like a complete player. And here's what Eric Stokes said today about Williams. Really sure tackler, smart, aggressive, and always around the ball. You love those intangibles as a safety, so it's perfect. Now, I wrote this in my story today. Even if Javon Bullard starts at deep safety alongside Xavier McKinney, whether one's at free, one's at strong, whatever, they're going to have to find a way to get Evan Williams on the field. And we have seen alignments where Evan Williams is the deep safety and Javon Bullard is in the slot. That's also with Keyshawn Nixon on the field in dime. And as we saw Keyshawn Nixon tweet, LOL, I'm the nickel. I forget what other part was in the tweet, but basically said he's the nickel. Mm-hmm. Bottom line is they got, at the very worst, good depth. Now, is Williams going to steal playing time from someone? He's making a case to.
Well, is it stealing playing time or is it just going out and earning it? I mean, the defensive secondary, the safety position is so young outside of Xavier McKinney, and he's only in his 5th season. It's so young. I mean, they've invested heavily in the draft this past year, and Anthony Johnson Jr. in his 2nd season, 7th round draft choice. I mean, he's going to have something to say about it, obviously, as well. But, you invest as high a pick as they did in Bullard. I think that most people kind of looked at him and said, all right, maybe he's going to be the anointed guy. But if Williams takes it, that's what training camp battles are all about. I mean, you can win a job in training camp. I mean, if you're both going to make the team, and obviously Williams and Bullard were both going to make the team, that was never in doubt. You can earn playing time by what you show the coaches, not only during the rookie camps, but the mini camps, and then on through to the training camp and preseason. And I think that's what Evan Williams is doing right now.
He wasn't in the locker room today, but I want to ask him because he'll be facing his college quarterback on Friday and Sunday in Bo Nix, the Broncos starting quarterback. I think he's their starter, Jarrett Stidham, from Oregon. And I want to ask Evan Williams how many times he's picked off Bo Nix in practice before, and if he's trying to add any more to that tally. That would be funny.
Oh, I think he's trying to add more to the tally.
But that's not the most interesting DB quarterback from the same college matchup we're going to get in joint practices this summer. Because next week we get Jair Alexander and Lamar Jackson.
That's
I'm
right.
Pumped for that. I'm ready for that.
That will be entertaining, if nothing else.
My goodness.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's a good pull.
One of the best corners in the league and one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Yep. We're college teammates together. Good buddies. That'll be good.
And Ja loves to jaw with his buddies.
Oh, yeah.
That's, like I said, that's going to be entertaining.
That will be. I'm ready for that. That's next week. Fast forward to next week. Packers-Ravens joint practice in Green Bay, so I don't have to fly anywhere.
No, that's nice.
That sounds good to me. After the break, wrapping up the odds and ends from practice today. Quay Walker dropped out of practice. Anything to be concerned about there? You'll see after the break. That's a tease right there. Doug Russell taught me that in the radio business.
You're now a professional broadcaster.
Matt Schneidman Show, as always, brought to you by Potawatomi Sportsbook, a new era in sports betting. If you bet the Yankees last night against the White Sox, I'd like to apologize on their behalf. 12-2, most runs and hits for the worst team in MLB history. So
hey, they've got a new manager. They're high on life.
I'll apologize on the Yankees' behalf for that one. We'll talk to you after the break right here on the Matt Schneidman Show on The Game. Back here on the Matt Schneidman Show, Tuesday, August 13th. Episode 2 of Week 2 of Season 2 of this fine program. He's Doug Russell. I'm Matt Schneidman. Just wrapping up some odds and ends from practice today. We talked about some Evan Williams, some Jordan Love deep balls, some Marshawn Lloyd and Jordan Morgan injury situations, some AJ Dillon. We spent a lot of time talking about that after what he told Channel 11 in the locker room today. Another thing I picked up from today's practice, Packers might need a new practice squad kicker. Now, I think the reason, and we've discussed this at length before, the reason they brought in Alex Hale, the undrafted rookie from Oklahoma State, is because my take was that they thought whoever they release of Greg Joseph or Anders Carlson will get claimed. And just in case they did, well, maybe they don't think they will get claimed. Maybe they think there's a chance they get claimed. And they just wanted to basically audition Alex Hale for a spot on the practice squad. Now, Alex Hale went 5 for 6 in his first practice. Today, 5 for 9. He missed 4 kicks in a row at one point.
Ooh.
From 47, 51, 54, and 56. One of them, I forget which one, hit the right upright. The 56-yard, he missed about 10 yards wide right. So his time in Green Bay might be short and sweet.
Bring in kicker number 6. Here we go.
I think if you're a guy like that who's coming in just for an audition like that, your leash is probably real short.
Probably.
So not that that matters for the Packers' actual kicking competition, which is between Carlson and Greg Joseph. But for their practice squad audition, those auditions might keep a churning.
Do you get a sense as to whether or not Anders Carlson still has, no pun intended, but I say that before the pun, so.
A leg up. I know you're going to say leg up. I know. I saw that coming. You're too predictable.
I know, especially when I telegraph it and tell you exactly what I'm going to say without saying it first.
I've said all along Joseph would need to blow him out of the water. I'm going to stick with that.
I don't know why, though. I mean, I understand they drafted Carlson and they give their own draft choices a longer leash. That's just the fact of the matter in professional football. It just is, always has been. But at a position like kicker, again, whoever does the better job, I think gets the job. And it just feels like Greg Joseph has been a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, I mean, he's made, I think, 3 or 4 more field goals than Carlson. I think 3 at this point.
It just feels like every time Anders Carlson kicks the football, it's a little bit of a high wire act.
Yeah, you could say that. And I know there were people online who felt that way because Anders didn't exactly hit his down the middle on Saturday. So you could say that. And maybe that's something Rich Bisaccia and the staff takes into consideration with how much do their, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. How much does their manhood drop into their stomach when Anders Carlson steps up as opposed to Greg Joseph? Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know why, if the mindset is that Greg Joseph would have to blow the doors off of Anders Carlson for Greg to get the job. For a position like place kicker, I don't think that should be the case. Whoever performs better in that role should get the role, period. It's place kicker. Why you ever draft one in the first place? Just kind of.
Yeah, you can make that case too.
Yeah. I mean, the Packers drafted, third round kicker and Brett Conway once upon a time. They drafted BJ Sander, for crying out. He's a punter, but drafted him early in a draft once. I mean, whenever they do that, whenever you spend some, that much draft capital on a guy, it's like, what are you doing? Like Sebastian Janikowski. I mean, thank God for the Raiders that he actually was a good kicker, but they drafted him in the first round, for crying out loud. And everybody's like, what are you doing? Good kicker, great kicker. But first round draft choice on a kicker? Probably could have gotten him in the 5th round, 6th round maybe. And he was a great kicker.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
We'll see what happens. It'll be fascinating to watch unfold as camp goes along. I mentioned before the break a Quay Walker situation. He dropped out of practice early. I was told that it's of no concern. I anticipate he'll be on the practice field tomorrow. It was really hot outside today. Maybe it had something to do with that. We've seen guys leave with heat exhaustion, I think, before this summer. So maybe it was that. We'll ask LaFleur tomorrow morning. Again, that's something we would obviously like to ask him after practice, but we will ask him tomorrow morning. Quay returned to the field at least and was in uniform watching from the side, just didn't have a helmet on. Speaking of linebackers, I made a note of this in my story. It's neat watching Edgerrin Cooper during practice. He doesn't practice, hasn't for a couple weeks now because of that hip injury, which is not good for him. And the promise that he has shown at times this offseason and preseason, less so preseason because he hasn't really practiced, but he'll stand like, I don't know exactly how many yards it is, but really far behind the defensive backs during 11-on-11s, like on the field. He's in the middle of the field, but maybe like 30 yards behind the defensive backs with just his helmet on. No pads, in uniform, sneakers, shorts, jersey, no pads, just helmet. And he's standing 30, 40 yards behind the play on the field, in the middle of the field, in a stance as if he's in the play, just going through these mental reps. And then when the ball is snapped, he either darts forward or drops back. He's trying to get those mental reps in. It was just funny and kind of intriguing watching him react to stuff and try to be part of the drill without actually being part of the drill. That's about as much as you can do during practice when you're not practicing.
Yeah, you got to stay mentally prepared. Sure, I like that. I like that guys are still into it mentally, even when they're not out there physically. It's a good look.
Yeah. Now, the defensive line, interior defensive line, I'm just going through my story today, looking at what I took away from practice. TJ Slayton had a massive batted pass, just like Dikembe Mutombo swatted it from Michael Pratt during a red zone drill near the end of practice. That was one of the ones that Michael Pratt took with the twos. You're wondering why is Michael Pratt and TJ Slayton on the field at the same time? That's why, because it was the twos. TJ Slayton had that, and it just continues this theme we're seeing in camp of Lucas Van Ness, Devontae Wyatt, Colby Wooden had the sack on Saturday. Like all these young defensive linemen are getting after it. And again, I've fallen for this before. I remember a couple of years ago, I said, wow, this defensive line looks good. They're going to be good during the regular season because I really like what they're doing during camp. It only means so much what they do during camp. Can they do it against the Philadelphia Eagles in Brazil? Can Lucas Van Ness get around Lane Johnson? Can TJ Slayton get around Landon Dickerson, a Pro Bowl guard in Brazil? We'll see. It looks good on the practice field at Ray Nitschke, but it's got to translate to game day. But you can't ask for anything more than what they're doing. We can praise them while also saying, all right, pump the brakes. We got to see it in a game. But Slayton, Wyatt, Van Ness, and then to a lesser degree, Wooden and Brooks, you could argue they've been some of the standouts of camp.
Well, there's been so much that's been said about the defense over the last several years, specifically under Joe Barry, but, you can go back, Mike Pettin, when he was the defensive coordinator. Every defensive coordinator they've tried to run out of town. I mean,
right.
Hashtag fire capers is still, every time they give up a touchdown, sometimes you see it on Twitter. Sometimes it's from me. Just as, everybody's got to pump the brakes a little bit, but certainly it feels like there's a different attitude this year with the defense. There's more aggression with the defense. And that's, I think, why and how Joe Barry fell out of favor, not just with the fans, but sometimes with some of the players. I mean, Jair Alexander obviously had a pretty big issue with the way that he was or was not being deployed by Joe Barry. And it just feels like with Jeff Hafley, I think there's good communication. I feel like everybody's kind of on the same page for the first time in a while. And that's not to denigrate Joe Barry. I think that, with the right personnel, he could be a good coach. I think Mike Pettin's a good coach. But sometimes you've got to have somebody who connects with the players and not only connects with them on an interpersonal level, which it seems like Jeff Hafley has done, but also schematically connects with what their skill sets are. And that's kind of the difference that I see so far from Jeff Hafley this year and from some of his guys. And it feels like it's a little bit, I don't know if infectious is the right word for it, but it just seems like there's maybe a little extra pep in their step this year. And it's nice to see. Absolutely. Because I think there's talent there.
Oh yeah. Jordan Love said today, he can't wait to see the defensive line get after other quarterbacks during live periods, and not just him. I'm sure he does. It'll be interesting to see. I can't wait for that Brazil game week one. I love week one every season because there's all this buildup and you just don't know what to expect. And then you see, all right, here's how the tone's going to be set for the season.
Mm-hmm.
We shall see. I hope everyone's happy I didn't wear a Yankee hat today. See,
Yeah,
my
I did notice that.
hairline stinks. It was not intentionally because I'm like, oh, I don't want to lose listeners and followers. It was just my hair wasn't an absolute mess when I woke up this morning. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go no hat today, but I'll probably go hat tomorrow just because it's really sunny outside. I had to destroy myself with sunscreen today, and I don't really want to do that.
Well, it also looks like in your studio, with the way the sun sets through that
Right, exactly.
through that window, you almost have to have something in there.
Yeah.
To shield your eyes. Or you could just get Tim Lays back in there from the engineering department
And
at
just stick his elbow in
WNFL
my
and
face.
just stand in front of you.
That's what was happening earlier. That was funny. Anyway, we'll be back same time tomorrow, wrapping up one more practice before I and the team fly to Denver on Thursday. The great Doug Russell has been on the ones and twos, as he always does so well. I'm Matt Schneidman. We thank you so much for listening. Talk to you tomorrow right here on the Matt Schneidman Show on the Game.